There we are. We are live. Injury podcast. Ryan Ray alongside the good doctor herself, Dr. Ellen Wald. Dr. Wald, how you doing?
Everything is great. What can I say?
It
Brent's
is.
not quite at 70, but everything is still great.
Brent. I'm just my $35 oil prediction is looking worse and worse. Like I said by the end of the year, so like technically I've paid my penance, but now like if it would have hit February, I would have gloated. Like, okay, I was off, but I was off by a few months. Like I needed to go well down for a long period of time. And I don't know. Okay, so I'm curious. The longer this goes, we change the narrative that the Saudis were right at some point? Because there was the Saudis are wrong, they're screwing up. At some point, do they win this time compared to last year where they lost potentially with Russia? And the other thing is, oh, by the way, I know there's reports, I don't know if we have it in our shows, that the U.S. frackers aren't necessarily, ramping back up. I believe I said on this podcast that them meeting monthly might keep the frackers in check, because if you're a bank saying, hey, price is at 70, but the Saudis are meeting in 25 days, I mean, they might put a couple, right? So is that part of what's holding the frackers back? Go ahead, Ms. Walt.
Now, that is a really good point because I hadn't thought about it like that. I've been criticizing OPEC for a while for doing this like every month meeting thing because people look to them for longer term guidance, and it's become very difficult, especially for countries that base their budgets off of oil sales, to not know what's happening month to month. I mean, it's tough even like 3 months at a time, 6 months at a time. I think that is tough for them. They don't know how much oil they're producing. They don't know, what OPEC's doing. But maybe it is keeping the frackers on their toes somewhat, except that, do they really I don't know. I can't imagine that they're going to be like, oh, we're going to wait and see what OPEC's doing. I mean, like,
Not
does
them, the
that
money
really
people behind
play?
them saying. The people, when they're going and saying, hey, we want to use our money for this, and they're like, well, hold on, you got like 30 days or 45 days. It's not. So you used to have it like October to June, right? Or November to June. And so you had kind of this long runway where a lot of things can happen. Well, now you've got 30 to 45, 60 days, whatever it is. And, not a lot's going to happen in that time period, you would suspect. Maybe not. I'm just curious. That's just.
Well, but then then you would have assumed that so back in February, or no, I'm sorry, back in January was when the Saudis made their said we're going to cut an extra 1 million barrels a day starting February, and we're going to do it for 2 months. So if you were taking the Saudis at their word, then you knew what was going on at least for the next 3 months. So at least you knew. You didn't know if they were going to extend it. Now you know they're going to extend it. I mean, come on, like, is it 3 months enough?
Yeah. So if you went back to January, you'd taken the bet, you'd have had a nice 6-month leeway or 5 months leeway, right? But now you've got, if you didn't take it the first time, it's like, well, are they really going to do it again in a couple of months? And so that uncertainty might, the one that's been good for the prices, it might, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what's in the minds of these bankers. I mean, I cannot imagine they're not looking at the $70 Brent, and what is it, like 67? What's WTI at? Like 67?
I just had it pulled up. I closed it out. So WTI is at 65, Brent's at 68.
Yeah, so you got $65 WTI, and they're not like, show us the money.
But okay,
like hello profits, like you guys kept pumping. Like, say you're Pioneer, say you're talking to like Pioneer, and you're like, guys, you were doing just fine at like 38. It's now 68. So here's some money. Go drill more.
Right. So what if you ask the question like this? What if you said, okay, the price, just to use easy math, is at 65 right now, and drill Pioneer, just to use their name, they're like, we want to drill this many wells. And they say, okay, well, this many wells will produce this how many barrels over the next 60 days. So until the Saudis are going to revisit it, how many barrels? And then so you have that number, and then you kind of think, well, if you're the banker, you probably have some insights on who else is drilling, right? So you start saying, okay, well, so how many barrels are going to be increased, and then you start weighing the risk of the Saudis responding in 60 days and putting barrels back on the market. And maybe, I think obviously the drilling's increasing, but it hasn't just blown the doors off. And maybe that's what's happening is they can actually gauge the time period, and they're like, it's not really worth the risk to put a bunch of barrels on the market right now because the Saudis turn the spigot on, so be it. And a lot of people still think that the Saudis in 2016, and then again last year, we're at war with the U.S. And so if you live under that mindset, then you might be expecting a trap here for the banker going, okay, the Saudis are trying to trap us into drilling again and then ruining our industry.
That's an interesting. They're like, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Like, we're not gonna be fooled the third time. I think.
I'm just speculating here because it doesn't make a lot of sense. I thought they would have drilled a lot more by now.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I mean, I get the idea that before they were being rewarded for growth over all else. So it didn't matter that they weren't profitable. It didn't matter that anything. It just all that mattered was growth. Plus, you had companies who needed to drill to pay their bills. So I remember saying this a lot when people were like, "Why are they still drilling? Why are they still like why when they're not even making a profit or barely breaking even on every sale?" And because they've got to make payroll, so they got to sell barrels just to get cash flow in, just to make payroll. So that was like you could understand why they were still doing this even though they weren't making a profit. But okay, so say you've gotten a lot of that out of the way. Say they're no longer in that situation where they have to sell, say a lot of the companies that were in that situation have folded, whatever. You're left with people who aren't, having this kind of trouble. They've got plenty of cash reserves. They're, have automated a lot. They don't have as large a payroll maybe as they used to have. They've skimmed, they've trimmed, whatever. So they're no longer necessarily in that growth mindset. But still, it seems like why, if they drill a little more, I mean, maybe that's just, maybe there's really only 1 million barrels in there. We did see production go from 10, basically 10 up to what is it, 10.9, almost 11. Maybe that's what there is. That's the 1 million barrels, and we're not, the next 1 million barrels isn't part of that. They're just, those are the junk barrels.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, let's well, I have a question for you. Our first story is oil falls giving up earlier gains on strong Chinese data. I was reading from the Foreign Policy, I think it was, over the weekend, and it talked about China and who all they're buying from in the Middle East. And so, there's OPEC members and non-OPEC members, and just kind of, and it was talking about how China is buying from allies and enemies in the Middle East. And so, it always strikes me when people talk like this because on some level, when you look at OPEC, obviously you have Iran, Iraq, and Saudi Arabia that are there willing to cut a deal. But will China, because their foreign policy is so different than the U.S., will they reshape how the Middle East does business and thinks about doing business? Because they really just don't seem to care. As long as you don't acknowledge Taiwan, and you do what you're supposed to do, and you don't criticize their government, they will work with just about anyone. Will they revamp how the Middle East does business?
I mean, it's interesting because they're doing a lot of business in Iran and they're doing a lot of business in Saudi Arabia, and everyone wants to do business with them. I think that when you're as big as China, people go to them, like Saudi Arabia's like, hey, sure, we won't criticize the fact that you're committing genocide against the Uyghurs who are Muslims. We don't care about them. And they want to send they want to do business with China. Iran needs to buy stuff from China because they're the only people they can do business with, and yet the Saudis seemingly hate Iran. I mean, personally, I don't think the Saudis hate Iran as much as people think they hate Iran. Iran is a very convenient enemy that Saudi Arabia has kind of crafted, or that the Saudi monarchy has kind of built it up into in order to craft its kind of nationalist narrative around. So so when I say, I mean, it's the enemy that they love to hate. So the absolute worst thing for the Saudi monarchy would be if Iran became a democracy, for example. That would be the worst case scenario for the Saudis, even if it meant that they were no longer, say, attacking them with rockets. They'd rather have Iran attack them with rockets than have Iran become a democracy. So I think, if you think about it like that, then who cares? The Saudis don't really care. They want to do business with China more than they care that China supports their so-called great enemy.
Right. And it's, yeah, that's kind of the frustration with the piece. It was a good piece, but just kind of that whole, well, China's doing business with these enemies. How's it going to work out? It's like, oh, that's how they do it. Oh, like,
They just don't send the same people they send to Iran to Saudi Arabia.
well, okay.
Just don't send the same guys.
I'm being dead serious. When they used to have the OPEC meetings, did the Iranians and the Saudis not sit in the same room?
Not only did they, well, okay, so I mean, it was like they weren't such like bitter enemies before, but when they were negotiating the oil shocks, not only did they sit in the same room, Yamani and the Iranian guy Amuzagar were the two OPEC people who were basically negotiating with the oil companies for this. And the two of them later on were abducted together by Carlos the Jackal. So like they had a joint traumatic experience.
Yeah.
Of course, that was before the revolution.
Right.
Yeah, and they like, okay, the Saudis were on the supported Iraq during the Iran-Iraq war, and that was kind of like the beginning of like the split. But it's not like that. Yeah, they all sit in the same room. There was one OPEC meeting where it seemed like there were some issues between the Iranians and the Saudis, and they had Russia, like basically like they had a separate room, and they had like Novak went and met with Saudis, and then Novak went and met with the Iranians. They like took all these pictures.
Yeah. So I think, not a geopolitical guru here. People know far more about this stuff than I do, but sometimes I just read the commentary and it's like, that's like, okay, I get that the Houthis and the Saudis and the Iranians, I get all that, but I also get that they go do OPEC deals and they do all kinds of stuff. And if they really wanted to fight, they would really fight. They don't really want to fight. And so, I don't know. It feels like from the government level and the geopolitical commentators level, everyone likes to have us on edge. And it's like, hey, but the real takeaway for me is that from the U.S. foreign policy perspective, we've tried to control the Middle East for so long, and China's just like, we'll buy it. Screw it. We'll buy it, baby. And their economy is so big now that for Iran, it's been a lifeline, right? The Iranians have been able to withstand, by and large, the Trump sanctions because they were selling oil to China, and China's like, yeah, screw it. Now, the U.S. could potentially put enough pressure on China to probably get them to back down. We haven't, and so I think we're pretty safe.
Yeah, and I do, but I think I think that the China-Iran relationship is actually a lot more complicated than we know, and it would be really interesting if we could, like, I hope we'll get more about it, but like from things that I've heard, Iran is not like that satisfied with a lot of the like goods and services that they've received from China. Like they ordered a lot of these new like cars for their public transit, and they were like really unsatisfied, and then the Chinese were pissed because the Iranians weren't paying them. So it's like, it's like yes, but like I think not as great maybe as we want to think it is.
Yeah, okay. But oil did fall because of taxes,
inflation, or maybe
so China buying outweighs potential taxes. Feels like this is this reason to move the market more than anything else. If this is even the reason, which this question, can the PR folk that represents the market, can they come on the show? Because I've always wondered, the market did this because of this. It's like, okay, I'm not too sure about that, but whatever. So the PR folk with the market, whoever you are, wherever you are, if you can come on, we have some questions for you. Strong China demand or Chinese data. You would think this. I don't know, Ellen. We had a record increase in oil with 22 million barrels. The market went up. Then last week we had 13 million barrels go on. The market went down a little bit. Does the market even know what it wants to do anymore?
No, the market has no clue. I think the market really liked the OPEC decision. I mean, I think that did push oil prices up.
Sure, that makes sense.
It makes sense. I mean, at this point, I think demand is going up. It's not perfect, but I think people have just kind of given up on jet fuel to some extent, or maybe it's, it's like there's like long haul, big international stuff, but like in the US, apparently this past weekend, the TSA screened more passengers this past weekend than they did on Thanksgiving.
So I saw that headline, and I saw it worded it a little differently. It said that it's back to pre-pandemic levels, and I thought, okay, I don't think that's actually possible because we have less flights. So unless we had so many more flights that the flights weren't really full, and now we have less flights, but all the flights are full, I don't know how you could have more passengers So we can't have as much demand because we just have less flights, right?
I think so, although but there's always that like weird cargo issue
Yeah.
where they like have to have more flights because they have cargo, and like when there were no people on, they were just putting more stuff on, and so like I'm assuming there are fewer flights still. But yeah, I mean it's okay. Can I just like mobility in the US? I do not believe that we have any accurate sense of what mobility in the US really is, really looked like. And obviously, if we don't know what it was or what it is, we have no idea what it will be. Because like all of the like you see these headlines and they're like mobility data shows it like back to normal, and then you're like, okay, but what is that mobility data?
Right.
And it's like they don't, how do they know? Like they're indicators, okay, and they're looking at like the movement of like phones or certain like in a and then they're like triangulating based on that, and you're like, okay, but you could be like following some like Amazon truck
Mhm.
around the neighborhood, and that mobility looks the same in California as in Florida, except how could mobility in California possibly be as much as it, how could it possibly be as normal as it is in Florida when no one's going out to eat in California because they can't? You know what I mean? Like these things don't make sense. So it just
Well,
seems to me like the data is flawed. The data, like the only way we have to measure air like plane mobility is TSA passengers screened and jet fuel consumption.
mhm.
And that's not like a real measure. There are, like how do we know really whether it's back to normal, like you said? So I just think that we have to understand that that data is not necessary, like that, like it's an imperfect way of measuring something because like we don't track everything in the United States. We just don't. And so we may never really have a good picture other than looking at what gasoline consumption actually was, and what, but we never know like how many people drove for Thanksgiving. We never know. We don't know what that is. The
Right.
AAA puts out an estimate beforehand, but then they never tell us what the real number was.
So this is according to Flight Radar 24. Number of commercial flights tracked by Flight Radar 24. This is for March. We'll do March 15th. So
Okay.
I'm gonna read these off to you.
Do you want to do that? Like March 15th is not over.
Okay, let me back up. Okay,
Maybe we want to do like
March 12th.
last Friday or something.
About March 12th. That work?
Okay.
So March 12th, so this is for 2021. The 7-day moving average is 72,636 flights. That day, the number of flights was 79,000. Okay, for perspective.
79,000.
Yeah,
Okay, I'm writing that down. 79,000
yeah.
on March 12th.
Call it 80,000 because 79,978. So we'll call it 80,000.
Okay, 80,000. Okay, that's
So,
a nice number.
so for 20,000 for 2020, the 7-day moving average was 101,000 and 102,000 actual flights.
Okay.
So 102,000 flight versus 80,000 flights. For
That's like less than half.
so then for 2019, I'll remove the 7-day number because it doesn't
Yeah.
matter. The number of flights on 2019 was 109,000, almost 110,000. So we had 110,000 in 2019, 102,000 in 2020, and 80,000 in 2021.
Okay. So we're below, but we're not like that much below.
Well, I mean, we're 20 to 30,000 flights off.
I mean, that's
I don't
that's
know
a
how
lot
much
of jet fuel.
you would think. I mean, I don't know. So let's see here. And then for
So where are they putting the people? Are they putting them like in cargo?
when you go to total flights now, so if you go to total flights, so this would be like all the flights you're talking about, right?
Mm-hmm.
For total flights, it's 149,000 for 2021, 171 and 172 for 2020 and 2019. So we're about 20,000 flights off there as well. But it looks like the commercial flights, the non-commercial flights, may have picked up some of that. So anyways, so we're still 20,000 flights off the pace. So,
But that's okay because we're shoving all that stuff that we're not using for jet fuel into making single-use plastics.
yeah, I mean, let me just pull this up. Make sure I'm reading this. Read this right. 'Cause I'm curious. Get you look at this. Make sure I'm not missing something. Flight radar. See here. Let's see here if I can get this to work. Miss Wald. Yeah, this is it. So let me share my screen. There we go. Okay. Can you see?
Ooh, kind of. It's a little small.
Let's see here. Any better? Worse? Same?
Yeah. No, that's good. Oh yeah, this is good. Okay.
So here, this is the total number of flights. I was down here at this one, the first one.
Mm-hmm.
So the blue, get this out the way here. So the blue line is 2020, and the black line is 2021. So
and the red line is 19.
Yeah.
Wow, it's so interesting. It's like basically like the same, except it goes up a little in the summer.
Right. So that's for the commercial flights. And if you look at the total flights,
yeah, let's look at total flights.
You can see right here, right, and that you can see the numbers are getting closer.
Yeah. Huh. So we're still down in commercial flights, but everything else is like normal.
Getting close to. Yeah, that's what it looks like. So anyways, it's just weird because you talk about the number of passengers. It's like, well, how are the number of passengers? I don't know. So, anyways.
Well, they were. I mean, I don't. Maybe the headline was wrong. Were they saying it's like pre-pandemic, like for like a random day, or were they saying it's like this compared like spring break last year? Or
I should have dug in. I just saw it, and then I saw you put this.
Yeah.
So, anyways, okay. Crude oil to 100. What makes the case for spiking oil prices, Miss Wald? If it gets to 100, drill baby drill is going to happen. I can tell you right now.
I mean, yeah, like everyone and their mother will start a fracking company.
Yes.
Right?
Yes, exactly. So
why not?
It's funny. I saw. God, I meant to send this for today's show. I saw someone saying that the commodity super cycle. Remember that was a big word like 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Like, actually, it's not going to be a super cycle now. I was like, well, hold on. I thought that was
like.
We didn't even get to it yet.
Is it like just a great cycle? Or like an okay cycle? Mediocre. Try harder next time cycle.
I'll just say this. I do miss the Trump press conferences because could you imagine right now, talking about, oh, we're having a super cycle and like it'd be the greatest cycle in the world. Yeah. Like just.
Yes, the greatest cycle in the world. Yes.
I do miss some of that. I really do.
Oh my God, I miss it so much. It's like boring. Everything is boring. Now all it is like watching like how many times Biden screws up and like loses his train of thought.
I will be having a barbecue at my house July 4th. Just a public service announcement. Okay.
Are we invited?
Yes,
I'm totally coming.
Come on, you can come.
Maybe July 4th. Maybe we'll podcast live together in person. How about that?
Yeah, we got a guest bedroom for you and the husband. Y'all come on down. So, anyways, $100 oil. Will it hit it, Miss Wald, or is this just a headline grabber?
Headline grabber. Okay. Come on, it's CNBC. That's how you know it's a headline grabber. CNBC can always find somebody to put on to say that we're going to hit $100 oil. When it was like 29, they were like, "We're going to hit $100." You'll see.
Well, if it hits 100, then OPEC's going to open the doors. Right.
Russia's gonna be like, bye.
Everyone's opened the doors, right?
Yeah.
So
I mean, okay, like, could it hit 100? Sure. Like, there are always reasons why. Like, someone could start a war in the Middle East and take out a whole bunch of production, or like, they could pass legislation declaring like all oil production in the United States is illegal. And and so like then there you go, like there's your like biggest producer is out. So yeah, I mean there's definitely, but I'm not sure. Let's see. Okay, it says the person from Piper Sandler says I could actually see a number that could be north of 100 in the next say 6 to 12 months from here. He's the firm's senior technical research analyst. Okay, 6 to 12 months from here. Okay, well, if you're gonna give it like that big of a time frame, then that's possible. I mean, okay, say there's like no more drilling in the Gulf of Mexico, and like they kill like, so say U.S. production goes down to like 8 million barrels a day. I could see oil being up. Even if OPEC opens all even if Saudi Arabia is like, fine, we're producing at 10, and Russia's like, we're going to produce at 11, or Saudi Arabia's like, we're producing at 11, and Russia's like, we're going to produce at 12 if we can, which they can't. So say they both produce at 11, that still won't make up. I mean, I think I wish you'd like give some like ideas about why he thinks that. There's clearly a double bottom that's been made even a higher. I mean, is he talking about like the lack of long-term investment? I don't know. He
Well,
didn't explain, so I'm gonna say that, like, yeah, I mean, you could come up with a lot of like wacky things. That's how you get a headline on CNBC.
yeah, I mean, yeah. So it could be 100, but again, I think the monthly OPEC meetings keep
Yeah,
all that from happening. But
yeah. I mean, wouldn't they also like be concerned? I mean, remember, is I mean, there are OPEC members who are like, who cares? We just want the absolute most. But I think they're definitely more of a like, we want to keep the consumers buying, and so like, if it's $100, then like China is gonna be like, okay, we have that big SPR, so not for us, guys.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I think when you look at the consumers, maybe I had a dream the other night because I'm a loser about this, but I had a dream.
He had a dream.
Yeah, I had a
Oil
dream.
hit 300.
No, I had a dream that it turned out that all the economy rebounded within like a few months and nothing was ever wrong, and you had people who weren't working and they were rich. It was really weird dream. Okay.
See, I had a dream that like I was going on an airplane flight. I dreamed that like I got on a plane.
Hey, speaking of which, we gotta look at Vienna. We gotta go for the OPEC meeting if they're going to have it.
Yeah, I doubt it. Vienna's like the most locked down city in the world.
Well, okay.
I highly doubt it. But
They can come to
otherwise,
the barbecue, and we can just do it all right on the back porch.
there we go.
We can do it all
There we
back.
go. You know, there's this like, I don't, what's the kind of like hot dog that they eat in Vienna?
Never
Wiener
been.
Schnitzel, Wiener Schnitzel. I don't know. There's like a stand right outside the OPEC building that everyone goes to in like a park and stuff. So
Yeah. But anyways, I had a dream that everyone was rich and that not like millionaires, but they could all spend and they like some people were quitting work because like why do I need to work? Anyways,
are you sure that the Biden administration hasn't tapped you for their like sell the stimulus plan like campaign?
maybe so, maybe so. But anyways, I think that when you go back to 2016, the consumer's ability to get a job, generate wealth, and all those things was fundamentally different than it is right now. So even if prices continue to rise, I don't think that the consumer can withstand it. And so
Yeah.
whether it's India or the U.S. and so it feels like right now you have a natural. We don't have, and Big Warren, I think has done a good job of kind of pounding this home. It's not like prices are going up because we cannot drill anymore. It's like we're maxed out on rigs and we're like, man, this is as much as we can produce. That's not the case. So we can increase the drilling, whether it's OPEC or the U.S. And so as the prices continue to rise, or if they continue to rise, the consumers at some point will just say, okay, we're buying less because we can't afford this because they just don't have the same wealth that they had. I know the $1,400 stimmy is a nice tip in the cap, but it's not enough. And so,
Yeah.
So I think that there's a natural cap on the price from the consumers.
Yeah, I think you're right. I don't think that there's I don't think that I don't think it would be good. It would be a good idea to let oil get that high. I
Yeah.
mean, really, I mean, letting it get much above even like Brent get much above 70, I think could be pretty problematic for a lot of places, for a lot of consumers.
Okay. President Joe Biden's administration has started approving hundreds of requests to drill on federal land after a first month where the pace of federal permitting plunged 98% in the same period last year. Ms. Wald, is Joe Biden now the pro oil and gas candidate or president?
Yeah, I think it's more that they like couldn't find the like approve button on the computers for a while, or they were like locked out of their accounts. Maybe took the IT folk a while to like get the new people in. No, that's not what I think, but that could be an explanation for why it took them longer to review drilling. Or they were like, what's a drilling permit? We need to read some Wikipedia articles before we can approve this.
So this story has kind of gone off the radar. It was a big deal when they announced it, but how much longer do we have the moratorium?
The moratorium is still there, and they
Right.
claim they're like reviewing the whole program, but they are like, there's a surge of activity. They approved 229, 70% went to operators in Wyoming, 24% were in North Dakota, poor New Mexico. Like everyone's talking about them getting clobbered by this moratorium. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know what's going on there, but yeah, I think it's. Of course, they're still saying that the pace of permitting is still well below what's typical. In the same 50-day stretch in 2020, BLM issued over 1,200 drilling permits. Though they're saying that although at that time there's more drilling activity because coronavirus restrictions were not widely in place. I'm sorry, you can't drill this well because coronavirus might infect the oil.
It's dangerous if you get to the oil. You really spread.
Yeah, because you're more likely to face severe effects from coronavirus than you are from like the dangerous machinery that you're using when
Obviously.
you're obviously. So
Obviously.
wear a mask, because the mask, by the way. Okay, sorry, I like little like I wish we could be like, could you rank the risks? Like I saw a guy riding a bicycle in a parking lot yesterday, looking at his phone, no helmet, no shoes, and wearing a mask below his nose. And I was like, could someone like rank these? Like what is more risky here? So yeah, more risky to like operate heavy machinery to drill an oil well, or like whether or not you maintain 6 feet of distance between you and the other guy operating the rig.
Yeah.
I think it's more that the people in the office are working from home right now. And so then it takes them longer to approve the permits. I think that's the coronavirus restrictions, not the oil wells.
So it says that the Interior Department is going to release an interim report outlining its next steps on oil and gas development by early summer. So when does summer officially start? Like mid-June?
I don't know. We're early summer right here. Like it's going to be like 84 degrees.
The first day of summer is June 20th.
So what? We're going to wait till like July 4th?
If they're using the term like as far as the calendar like summer goes, yeah, you're talking about July before you get this. And so summer's from June 20th to September 22nd. So you're talking about mid-July potentially before you hear anything.
Oil could be like 80.
I mean, but are they going to extend the moratorium until they get these new guidelines?
The moratorium is like what, 60 days?
60 days, yeah.
So what's 60 days from January 20th? It's probably early summer.
No, it'd be almost now. It'd be close.
It'd be close. We're close to 60 days.
We gotta be getting close, right?
I don't know. I can't do arithmetic calendars. I hate that
Well,
stuff.
so February 20th would be 30 days. March would be 60.
So we're coming up on it. So get your act together, Bureau of Land Management.
So I wonder if they're gonna extend it until they get these guidelines released until.
Hey, you know what we would love? If someone out there is in the Bureau of Land Management and the Interior Department and would like to come talk to us about what you foresee as your next steps and what is going to happen with those interim 60 days between March 20th and June 30th. When you issue your report, we would really be interested, and we think other people would be interested to hear. So come on our podcast and tell us.
Yeah, I agree.
I wish I knew someone who was working there.
Yeah, I don't either.
Hey, maybe I have some follower who's like.
There we go.
Yeah.
Coal bite.
We'll even disguise your voice in case you know. No, I have no idea how to do that.
I don't know if we can do that or not. Ellen wants you to do that. So cobalt prices soar as China stockpiles metal used in smartphones, electric car batteries. Okay. So Ms. Wald, let me ask you this. China has talked about its rare earth minerals and stuff. And one of the advantages that China has is that they can direct their economy to do things. So if they want to build a bunch of buildings, roads, bridges, they just do it, right? That's the beauty of communism or extreme socialism, is you can just say and it happens. The problem is that the market doesn't respond. And so I thought about this weekend. There's a lot of talk about EVs, EV batteries, and all this transition. And yet China is China the one actually leading this charge? So because China's invested a ton into this battery technology, and so are people looking, going, okay, well, China will be able to supply it, therefore we're going to make our people switch to it. But without China, would we have such a push to go to EVs, you think?
I think we'd have a push no matter what, even without China. But what's interesting is that I think that they're basically like they're like bought up they're taking it all from Africa. Look at this photo.
Mhm.
You cannot tell me that like, and this bothers me so much because the whole like ESG investing thing, like, oh, batteries for cars, good for the environment. And you've got like teenage boys sitting in a mine with no protective gear, no nothing, like not going to school, not
Hammer and chisel.
yeah. I mean, this is not good. Like, this cannot be good. You cannot convince me that like you're making the world a better place by investing in this.
Oh, I agree. I don't think the U.S. I don't think the average U.S. green leaning person who is hardcore, you got to go to EVs, understands exactly what's involved in the process. And so I think if we were to mandate it happens here, I don't think it would actually catch on. And so, so China is doing a lot of this, and it kind of gets swept under the rug.
And China's bought up, and it's all in like where are they doing this? They're doing this in Africa.
Mm.
The Chinese countries continue to ship cobalt hydroxide to China from Africa, so they don't necessarily need it right now, right? But they've like they're just trying to like corner the market on it, so they own it all, and then they can produce as much batteries as they want. It's like, do they have like a cobalt hydroxide, storage center?
Okay, this is how Tesla ends badly, right? Because their connection in China.
Oh yeah, I can't imagine that it doesn't end badly. Like
Real badly.
Because China's like, oh, sorry, no more for you.
Yeah, well, right now they're solely owned. They're one of the few companies, maybe the only company that has its own factory in China. That won't last forever. And if it does, it means that China will liberalize again, and that would be a great thing. But if it doesn't, then Elon will eventually say something. As much as he says, he will say something, and that will be it.
Yeah.
Or China will say, you know what, we don't need you anymore. We've got our own technology. We're good. So I don't know how, as much as China's investing in the EV movement, it seems like Tesla is over leveraged, but in a rough spot if China decides that, you know what, we're gonna change the rules, because by the way, they do change the rules from time to time. They've been
they change the rules, or they just wanted to take your factory, or they just want more of a larger share of the investment in it, or what happens with the Soviet Union. So like, that's why people should read what happened, The World for Sale, because they talk a lot about what happened with Russia's commodities as the Soviet Union collapsed. And you could see, like, it was basically like these commodity trading firms were like, hey, you've got alumina, but you can't get it to market because the state was your only buyer, and now the state collapsed. Okay, so we'll buy it all for you and like, bring it around. It's like, it was like the Wild West. And then you've got like the rise of these like oligarchs who made a lot of money, who like, they knew what was going on, and so they just like bought it themselves and took it over. I mean, that's a possibility for what could happen in China.
Have we talked about Operation Odessa on this podcast?
I don't think so. That sounds creepy.
So, yeah. So Operation Odessa is a story. I got to finish it, but it's about these mobsters, and they're going to Russia, like buying helicopters, and trying to buy a submarine right now. Like after the wall fell, like everything's up for sale, and they're just going to buy all kinds of stuff. It is.
Oh, could you imagine that happens to China?
Yeah. Right.
Hey, who wants to buy Tesla's factory? Or
it's so I don't know how it ends, because all the main characters are in the documentary, and obviously this is a long time ago, so they all live, so I don't know what the big finish is here, but it's interesting. So okay, let's see here.
Look, I just want to like 70. I want to just emphasize how big a deal this is. 70% of all globally mined cobalt is transported between the Democratic Republic of Congo. I said Dominican Republic, which is not the same thing as the Democratic Republic of Congo, and China via ports in South Africa.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So like, this is like, I mean, that is a huge limit on car production if you need to use this for EV. Like, I think that there are ways that battery life and limits are not the only limiting factor here.
Yes. And oh, by the way, I thought I said that, Ben, but okay. Yes, the movie is on Netflix. If I didn't mention that, maybe Ben's the one who told me about this movie. Anyways, the movie is on Netflix.
All right.
Yeah, when you look at China's the way they're pushing their economy towards the EVs, towards the batteries, and maybe it makes sense because they think that ultimately it's cheaper for them in the long run than buying oil and gas. It's interesting, but it also, if EVs do not actually ever take market share, then we're going to look back and look at all the money that China wasted all these years trying to develop all this battery technology and make all these batteries, and it will be a wasted time. So when we talk about the EV movement, part of I wonder how much the hype is behind it is because China's devoting so much money to it. And say what you want, when China does something now, it gets noted, it takes notice. People are like, oh my gosh, go back to Wuhan. When they first shut down Wuhan, I'm like, okay, and they shut down the country, like, oh wow, okay. And so when they do stuff, it now gets attention globally because they are, the number 2 economy in the world. So we'll see.
This is why clearly, the only solution is just endless lockdowns.
Well, thank you for bringing that up. I didn't want to say that.
Yeah.
Yeah. 3 ships carrying U.S. ethanol head to China. So let's just make sure I'm tracking this right. We're growing corn. We're cutting the corn. We're turning to ethanol, and then we're selling it to China.
Yep. And I think that qualifies under the trade deal.
Phase 1 trade deal. That's phase 1 trade deal.
I think so, yeah. I think that is phase 1 trade deal.
Good gosh.
Iowa. Yep, they got it. Oh yeah, the corn people send the ethanol to China. God, God, ethanol just continues to astound me. Let's take food and turn it into not food, and then ship it to China. So people, do they have ethanol mandates in China? Do they mix it with their gasoline? I don't even know. I know why we do, but
I don't know what they're doing with it in China, obviously.
Yeah, what are they doing with our ethanol in China?
Domestic corn is too expensive, it says. I don't know. It's interesting. I don't know. Man United, yes, I saw a picture that Bill Bishop put on his Twitter about the air pollution in Beijing yesterday, but I don't know if that was yours.
I saw that. Don't they have a dust? Isn't it like a dust storm? Or is that Saudi Arabia?
I didn't.
Could be confusing.
I didn't look. I just saw Bill Bishop posted it, so I didn't.
But so ethanol. Okay, so from what I know about ethanol is it doesn't super reduce pollution. It's actually ethanol is a substitute for something. Ethanol was created to use in gasoline as a substitute for something called MBTE, which they used to put in gasoline to make the octane uptake better or something like that. And they found that MBTE was causing cancer. So they said you can't put that in gasoline anymore. Use ethanol instead. Then George W. Bush got this great idea that we should have an ethanol mandate and we should use more ethanol in our gasoline because we were going to run out of gasoline. Not because it's environmentally better. So that's how we have the ethanol mandate. It's not because it's not real. I'm not sure how much it actually reduces air pollution. EVs, on the other hand, if they were you can only drive in Beijing if you drive an EV, might reduce air pollution. Or they could just mandate bicycles.
That's what I was thinking. Mandate bicycles. That works for me. I could use the exercise. Okay, Miss Wald. One more quick story. To go electric, America needs more mines. Can it build them? No.
No.
Yes, it can, but no, it won't. That's my answer. Yes. What is yours?
Yeah, I don't think we're. I mean, come on. Could you imagine? Do you know how long it takes to build a new mine to get a permit for that? Come on. But I think it's a good point. It kind of goes along with that cobalt issue where, okay, so we want to have more electrification, but we don't want to be dependent on China, which basically controls the entire supply of cobalt. So it's just you have to reduce your dependence on China for rare earths like lithium and cobalt and other minerals. And so, what are you going to do? I mean, unless they can, maybe they can offer DRC a better deal. Maybe they should just go in there and be hey guys, how much foreign aid you need.
Well, if you do that, and I don't want to get into the politics of DRC particularly, but we're talking about not exactly savory work conditions that you'd have to endorse.
Yeah.
right?
Or yeah,
Or,
I mean, you'd
or
have
you're gonna, or if you're gonna raise up the standards, then you're talking about the cobalt becomes more expensive because China's doing it. Because go back to the Middle Eastern comment, they don't care about all that stuff.
yeah.
So so if you want to, it's one of those things where you say, well, okay, we're gonna go down to the DRC, we're gonna put on all these OSHA regulations, we're gonna make sure it's all done safe. It won't be, but let's just pretend that it is. Now the cobalt's more expensive, and so the consumer is now paying more, and that cheap EV has to be subsidized by the taxes. So then the consumers actually pay more because they're getting taxed more. Yeah, it's just a vicious circle. So
Yeah, and in the process, the like poor African children are still working in the mines,
yes,
not going to school.
exactly.
Yeah. So, okay. Well, what about elsewhere? Like, where else in the world can we, if we won't mine in the United States, can we like make them mine in Canada or Mexico or like some country that nobody cares about yet? I don't
Well,
know.
Americans don't care about any country but America until they
Right.
pretend to care about some other country. So theoretically, the Chinese could
Until
be.
it's useful for them politically to say
Yes,
they care about
then
another
then they
country.
care.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, okay, okay. I've been reading this book called The 100-Year Marathon. Um, have you by Michael Pillsbury? Have you read it by any chance?
No. 100-year marathon?
Yeah, 100-Year Marathon. And it's talking about China's. I haven't finished it, so I've been listening to it because people are like, oh, okay, whatever. The 100-Year Marathon. It talks about China's plan from 1949 to
There you
there
go.
it is. Yeah, 100-Year Marathon. China's secret
Ooh.
strategy to replace America as a global superpower. Okay, let me just say this. I don't know where he's going to conclude the book. I will simply submit that if you read this book and you still think that America understands how to play geopolitics by taking his own admissions, like I'm just taking everything he says is true, then you will begin to understand my frustration when we talk about geopolitical things because he's like, well, they tricked us here, they tricked us there, and then they played us here. And it's like, well, maybe we should just try to quit play. So we sold them these because we thought about this, and we gave them this torpedo because of this, and that was all a lie. They were all lying to us. Like, well, okay, I have no idea, but let's just say that they are. Guys, you got to quit doing this stuff because y'all can't do it. Like y'all are inadequate at trying to play these games with people. It's stunning to read some of these books and you look at like this DRC problem, and the politicians, as you say, when they pretend to care, they start putting in these deals, and these deals make it worse. And then they're like, "Oh, we didn't know that." It's like, well, yeah, because a bunch of morons. I don't know. It frustrates me listening to these geopolitical books where they're like, "Well, back then we didn't know, but now we've got it figured out. So trust us now." It's like, no, you still don't know.
The more I look at this, I think that the only solution is just that they're just going to say that Americans should not drive at all. Like Americans just shouldn't drive because if we're not allowed to drive internal combustion engine cars, but China has all of the like the rare earths that we need for batteries, like literally like everything. They're like worries about wildlife, sacred grounds, flowers for a copper mine. Plus, there's like so we can't have this copper mine in they don't want to mine copper sulfide in Minnesota, northern Minnesota. Okay, but there's a copper mine that they want to open in the Amazon and they can't because of all this other stuff. And the Biden administration blocked a land swap to that they wanted to build this mine. So at this point, it's like in Nevada, the Department of Wildlife, whereas the lithium mines planned by Lithium Americas and others would harm trout, deer, and pronghorn habitats. I mean, like what? It's so clearly the only solution is go back to subsistence lifestyle for everybody, and only the super wealthy get to have like. I mean, like, what do you want? Like, are you going to like? Do you want to prioritize the thirsty squirrels who gnawed at the roots of more than 17,000 flowers for water amid a drought in Nevada?
Oh,
Or do you want your lithium?
that's fine. The thirsty squirrels. We're gonna start a foundation.
Thirsty
Save
squirrels.
the thirsty squirrels.
Water for thirsty squirrels. Yeah.
Can we get Sarah McLachlan to sing the song for us? The Arms of the Angel or whatever.
Yeah. The Fish and Wildlife Service is going to set to rule this summer on whether the flower, a particular flower, is an endangered species. And if they do, that designation would prevent development on much of the land some place called Ioneer is trying to mine. Ioneer has hired scientists to move the flowers to a new site.
I'm in their own business.
I mean, Like, what are we? I mean, like, come on, guys. So, okay, so we won't wreck our flowers, but it's totally okay if the Democratic Republic of Congo and China wreck theirs, and we'll just buy from them and exploit everybody else. But, all right.
Okay,
With that,
I am frustrated about the geopolitical elite and how they just never learn their lesson. You are frustrated about how we say we want one thing and we don't want the we allow it somewhere else. But with that being said, we will be talking about other things this week. So where will you be?
yes, I will be up with a new column on War Room newsletter and hot take of the day, probably having to do with fascism and something about that. And then I will also be on investing.com later this week, where I think I'm going to discuss the effects of inflation on oil prices. And that's it. Oh, no, everyone should totally check. Okay, so if you're interested in like real life hoaxes and cons, back in September 2019, I filmed this segment about this fake Saudi prince who like managed to steal $8 million at one point, and like a lot of other stuff, and con a whole bunch of people. And so you should all check it out. It's now finally up on Vanity Fair. It's like part of their true crime series, and it's really like a crazy, crazy case. So you should all check that out.
All right, awesome. I will be at the War Room newsletter as always, Takes On Guys podcast, and I don't know, somewhere else, I'm sure. So with that, we will be back. Are we back next week or is next week?
Yeah, next week is API's monthly statistical.
Yes, that's right. That's right. Yeah, Dr. Foreman had a conflicting schedule this week, so we'll be back next week, and we will talk to you then.